Welcome, everyone. We're delighted to have you with us this afternoon. My name is Whitney Barth. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for the Study of Law and Religion here at the Law School. And I'm delighted our center is delighted to be co-sponsoring this event with the Center for International and Comparative Law, which is led by Professor Magdalena Epoch. So thank you to CICL and for co-sponsoring this event. We're delighted to welcome Professor Joseph David back to the Law School. Professor David is a senior fellow within the Center for the Study of Law and Religion. And if you'll indulge me, I'll read a short bio here in a minute, but I just wanted to say we're delighted to have guests from across campus, including undergraduate students. So thank you for coming. We're grateful that you made the trek. And it's a beautiful day, so hopefully it wasn't too strenuous. Our center hosts a number of events throughout the year, so welcome to you again, as does the Center for International and Comparative Law, and they have a wonderful listserv, so sign up for that as well. And we're always, either center is open to students visiting, have a question, come talk to us about our respective work. We're delighted that you're here. Without further ado, I will go ahead and introduce Professor David. Professor David is a professor of law at Sapir College in Israel and is currently a Berkovich Fellow at the House of Global Legal Studies at NYU. And we're grateful that as part of his trip to the United States, he could come and visit us here in Atlanta. He's also a visiting professor in the program of Judaic Studies, or has been in the past, a program of Judaic Studies at Yale University and of law at Yale Law School. He is the author of numerous books and is also on the Journal of Law and Religion editorial board. So we're grateful for his involvement with our center in that way as well. If you would like to read more about his many accomplishments, I encourage you to check out our website under the Senior Fellows profile. But without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Professor David to share with us what he's been thinking about and working on. After Professor David's formal talk, we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers. So we look forward to your engagement in that session of the afternoon. We also encourage you to have snacks. Some of you have already found, so thank you for helping us enjoy those. And I will turn it over to Professor David. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. Should I put the mic? Oh, okay. Thank you very much for having me. It's really a great honor and great privilege to be in this center, which is the most important center for the study of law and religion, and pioneering in so many aspects. Thanks to my colleague, Professor Michael Broad, for the ongoing connections through the years, to the executive director, Whitney, for our great communication, and to Silas, my boss in the editorial, for tolerating me also on this occasion. So I'd like to present some of my works, which in many ways mark my development from the classical study of law and religion to contemporary challenges. Something which initially sounded not so trivial. And then on the further waves, everyone is talking about AI and artificial intelligence in other platforms. So I'm trying to make some order by questioning the impact of, I want to question here today the impact of the data revolution in general. I'm not using the term AI for reasons which I could elaborate, but whether the impact of the data revolution on the field generally described of law and religion, and obviously it's a very complex field, multi-dimensional field, but I refer to the field of law and religion as a study of two sources of order and meaning in general. So I know that from the Jewish perspective, there's a different balance between law and religion, from Christian and other perspectives. So I'm not referring to these internal connections, but rather to law and religion as both sometimes contesting, sometimes competing sources of meaning and order. And I'm asking it, to be more precise, whether the impacts of the data revolution on law and religion is different, is unique, different from other impacts of other revolutions. What is so unique in the data revolution impacts on law and religion, which we haven't seen in other precedents in the history? And I'm also asking about the uniqueness of the impact of the data revolution on law and religion and not other domains. Obviously, data revolution is something that transforms all dimensions of lives, economy, sociology, society, everything is impacted by data revolution. I want to look on the unique impacts of data revolution, which are really unique and special to the field of law and religion. So I would start first by presenting what I think is the historical picture of the interplay between law and religion on the one hand and technology on the other hand. And I think that just, outlining general outlines, that the historical picture of this interplay is something that we could portray. Namely, there are some presumptions that went with our, at least Western history, I'm not talking about non-Western history, but in the Western history, we have some presumptions that are ongoing for more than 2 millennia, namely from antiquity, from ancient times, where actually we have a documented history of both law and religion on the one side and technology on the other side. And one of the presumptions is that we have a separated phenomenology, namely that the domains of law and religion and technology are phenomenologically distinct. While law and religion are about values and truths, while they have some structure of hierarchy, technology was seen to be usually, since ancient times, as a material object, as an instrument, something that appears contingently. No one could really predict what technology will come up. No one could really predict what would be the impact of technology. So while we have, on the one hand, domains which provide order and meaning, technology is really material object, is very instrumental, is very marginal. Basically, technology serves human beings, while law and religion provides, as I said, meaning and order, which are much more necessary and, in fact, conditional to the human existence. In that respect, the traditional picture portrayed them in the following interaction. Usually, technology appears. Technology impacts, societal impacts, economic impacts, all kinds of impacts. Then law and religion, both independently, are detecting the transformation, that something came out. They go through some process of identifying the challenges, and then they react. Usually it's about regulating the new technologies, either giving up on whatever can come of it, or restricting its usage, or alike. But the chain of actions goes to that way. Technology appears, law and religion react, and usually regulate and tell us what to do. And if you think about all kinds of interactions of law and technology through the history, they follow this pattern either from the legal side or from the religious side. Think about, for example, how electricity appeared in modern times. For Jews, mainly Orthodox Jews, it became a challenge. And then there was a process where it was decided whether to allow using electricity on Shabbat or not. There were different opinions. And if not, how to make it prohibited, how to explain it, how to reason for it. thanks God, as I can say as an observant Jew, that we don't use electricity on Shabbat, and that gives us 1 day free of screens. Very, very precious things nowadays. But think about others. Think about, for example, the very famous example of the famous article written by Brandes and Warren about the right to privacy. This also exemplified the very same chain of actions. A new technology appears. In that example, it was the portable camera, which had an impact, namely, it gave rise to gossip, to paparazzi, to the infringement of privacy. Then there was a moment where they came out with how to respond to this challenge. In that case was by defining the right to privacy as a way to regulate or to react to the challenge. And this is all because of the historical picture is basically a picture of, in one hand, tensions between technology, law, and religion. On the other hand, it ends up by equilibrium. Namely, there is a way, there is a balance that is found. And since then, law and religion on the one hand, technology on the one hand, are in fact phenomena that develop different trajectories or different strads. The evolutionary of religious or legal ideas is independent from the history of technology. These two distinct phenomena, separate phenomena, are in fact might interact, might challenge, might cause some tensions. Nevertheless, they live or they coexist in some equilibria. Then, in that respect, I can refine my initial question and ask whether the data revolution is in some way changing something in this balance, changing something in the historical picture with the equilibrium between the phenomenon. And I would like to argue that the answer is yes. And what I would like to do with the rest of my time is to point on 4 domains, or 4 themes, I would rather say. 4 themes that are uniquely impacted by the data revolution and change the balance or change the equilibrium that we used to have. The first one is about humanism, namely, what's the essence of being a human being? Or what is special in human beings vis-a-vis other entities? And here we have 2 opposing impacts, I would say. On the one hand, what we call human exceptionalism, the idea which obviously emerged from Western religions, that human beings are created in the image of God, and that provides their status, but also their responsibility and alike. It is being challenged because now we have some traits which were considered very unique to human beings, like intelligence, which are created by human beings, but might supersede human beings. So what does it mean? Basically, it is about thinking anew about what does it mean to be human. Obviously, it's also a cornerstone of modern human rights law. Think about the secularized version of the very same idea, namely human dignity in its various versions. It's about the uniqueness of human beings, whatever they are, regardless of their status, ethnic origins, and even past deeds, that they encapsulate in themselves some entity, to use the terms of Immanuel Kant. Human beings have some essential entity which should be respected, and from this respect on, we build our morality and legal duties. On the other hand, human capabilities are extended and enhanced much more than ever before. So I think one of the representative of awareness or this intuition that data revolution might challenge our self-image, our self-understanding of what does it mean to be a human being, was no less than the forefather of modern computational capacities, Alan Turing. He was not a religious person. He was not a theologian. Nevertheless, in his famous article from 1950, after exposing his vision about artificial intelligence, he started by listing 9 objections to his vision, starting with the theological objection. And the theological objection is really formulated very simply when he says that thinking is a function of man's immortal soul. God is giving immortal soul to every man and woman, but not to any other animal or machines. Hence, animal machines cannot think. My mistake, not his. Okay, this is indeed, it was much brighter mathematician, because he also he puts the question in theological terms. He's trying to answer in theological terms, but I think he got the intuition very clearly that data revolution, and he's the one who speaks about data revolution before data revolution. Data revolution will cause us to think anew about what does it mean to be human beings. Now, he's approaching, obviously, in this context, the theological idea, but nevertheless, it also challenges us from the legal perspective. What does it mean to be human beings once the uniqueness of being a human is not apparent so anymore? Then we have to think anew. Another aspect which exemplifies the contrary direction is well articulated by contemporary philosopher of information and AI ethics, Professor Luciano Floridi, now at Yale, moved from Oxford to Yale a year ago. And he speaks, actually, he coined the term homo poeticus to actually define the following. I'm reading from the second passage. In global information society, the individual agent is like a demiurge. Namely, in information society, human beings are getting closer to God than ever before. Her ontic powers can be variously exercised over herself, over human society, and over natural and artificial environments. So this ambivalence, I would say, on the one hand, we lose some of our status as human being, exceptional beings in the creational order. On the other hand, we are overpowered. We are indeed getting closer to God in so many aspects, and that is leading us to the next theme that is impacted by data revolution. And here we also see 2 contradicting directions. On the one hand, we got the feeling that data revolution is something that is going out of our control, or will go out of our control very soon, if not already. On the other hand, we have a different intuition that by the products of data revolution, human control is intensified and enhanced much more than ever before. Now, the speakers of this could be various. The first example I always like to bring in is the Pope Gregory the 16th. And he witnessed so many changes in his time, mainly the invention of the rail trains, which he thought this is a disaster. This is a Satan work. He did not allow using trains at this time. Actually, he didn't allow so many other things. He was against democracy and elections, and but he opposed also the invention of gaslight on the original sense, namely the capacity to light up the streets and to allow much more extended time in the day for social activities, labor, and such and such. Why? Because that will challenge things or traditional regularities, traditional structures, traditional habits. By the way, here it should be important to mention that it's not peculiar to religious leaders or religious authorities. Here on your right, you can see a picture from 1926. The first rail train which was supposed to be activated between two cities in England. It was not activated in the same day against a protest of just ordinary people which believed that moving in a speed of a train, I'm talking about the early 19th century, will be distracting and harming the human body. So it took some time where they had to convince them that going on a train or going in a speed of, I think it was 30 miles per hour, will not harm the human body. Another example from the 80s is with the widespread of the calculators, a protest of math teachers, which believed that if we allow our students to use calculators, they will know no math anymore. So I think that every time that a new technology appears, it usually comes with fear or sometimes with an anxiety. By the way, Freud identified the anxiety from trains as something peculiar. I don't know, he made a great deal of that, but nevertheless, every technology that changes, every technology that has the capacity to transform some dimensions in our life, obviously brings some anxiety, and obviously something that comes against traditional power structures and alike. On the other hand, I want to bring up one of the contemporary voices of Egert Schurman, which I suspect that some of you may know him. He's one of the theologians, actually in his former career was an engineer, one of the very predominant speakers against what he terms as technism. Namely, it's not about the peculiar or specific technology, about technism as a worldview that is based on the assumptions that by technology we could improve, and in fact we could even perfect at the end the human existence, something that promises salvation, if we go back to religious terms, but something that he I think is a disaster because, as he says, it is countering two important issues. One of them is that it counters the creational order. Technism, and actually he develops these historical pictures that it all started with in the Renaissance, and then through early modern, the new science, empiricism, it gets to its peak nowadays maybe, but the data revolution is something that its roots go back centuries before. And this is part of a belief that we could counter creational order because creational order or nature is imperfect. We are limited by disease, we are limited by other natural restrictions, and the belief that we can escape them, we can create a better environments, better forms of life, is something that goes against the creational order in the sense that we don't respect enough the inner reason or the inner wisdom behind creational orders. But more than that, as he expresses it in this quote, the problem of control is that there is a paradoxical process in which we are trying to gain control over nature by technology, but eventually we are slaved to technology and we lose even control and we even lose freedom. So technism is a false promise in his view, a false promise that on the one hand is succeeding in showing up that we could indeed overcome some natural boundaries, but eventually we lose something which is more precious. This is the human freedom. And we are, in fact, losing even the natural control endowed by God. Now, the third theme, which I want to present, and then move to the fourth one, which I want to elaborate more, is that data revolution is impacting the semantic, the religious semantic as well as the legal semantic. And the speaker of that voice, I think, is one of the first voices in that respect is the Nobel winner, which was mathematician, a forefather of the science of cybernetic. He was a professor at MIT, one of those professors that in 47 after bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki, he wrote a resignation letter, which he never submitted, but he felt guilty to the end of his life. But towards the end of his life, he gave a series of lectures, which was then edited as a book. You see the book here, which he termed God and Golem in Cooperation. And the subtitle is no less important. The subtitle says, a comment on certain points where cybernetics impinges on religion. Now, the Golem is the hero of the folklore Jewish legend about a creature. There are various versions, but the latest one, which he knew about through his father, which was a professor of Russian literature, is the story of the Rabbi Levi of Prague, Maharal in Prague. And the story is about the Jews suffered from persecutions, all kind of false blood tales. And he created, by his magic, his mystic knowledge, he created the golem, anthropomorphic, non-human figure, which protected the Jews. And usually he used to unplug it every Friday before Shabbat. One day he didn't unplug it, and then it was fearing not only the Gentiles but also the Jews. So one see the golem in the title, think that Nobel winner is talking about the same predicament as Schwimmer, but he's talking about something different. He's not talking about the problem of control. He's talking about something that he sees as more fundamental and was more troubling. He argues that by the new capacities, and this guy in the 40s already saw the data revolution in his vision. And he foresaw that machines, intelligent machines built by human beings, will have the capacity to learn and to reproduce other machines. And this very phenomenon, what he terms the creational activity, is something that we cannot understand, we cannot refer to with our traditional language, which differentiate between creator, between human being created by God, but nevertheless in the image of God, and between material. So two dichotomies are collapsing or decomposing by artificial intelligence by him. The first dichotomy is the dichotomy between the creator and the created. Once the created human being, as created entities, can create a new species, a new entity, then you ask yourself, what is indeed in this dichotomy? Is this dichotomy only relational or something more categorical? And also the dichotomy, that's the professor in MIT, the dichotomy between living organisms and material. The idea that machines, that in his vision was only boxes made of iron and maybe plastic, the idea that material object can reproduce the same entities, it seemed to him fantastic. On the one hand, he was sure that this is going to happen. But then he asked, how can we continue to hold our traditional categories to think about creator, created, material, living organisms, and just material? By the way, he was one of the first thinkers who spoke about information, that he said we have to understand that information is nor material nor energy. It's a different element in our reality, in a world. We have to get used to that. For thousands of years, we thought about, starting for 4 elements, then we had chemistry, we extended the table of elements, but we were still we're sticking to the idea that reality is basically of material, then energy came into place, and information seems to be a different element which we don't have the vocabulary to understand. I think that he problematized the problem that we are not thinking about enough, but if I would encapsulate it in very briefly, I would say that data revolution cannot allow us to think and to speak about reality in traditional categories. We have to refresh them, we have to redefine them, we have to invent new categories, but we cannot go with them. By the way, it goes also with legal concepts. Think about the idea of jurisdiction, which modern jurisdiction is some unity between space and power, right? So power has a place in the space limited by borders. Think about the definition of a criminal act. It's a unity of time, space, and action. And nowadays, when you want to commit a crime on the internet, it's not clear on where exactly it is committed. It's committed where the keyboard, where the server, where the bank account. It's not clear. I mean, some of our definitions, or think about copyrights, right? Copyrights in the era of ChatGPT. Right? When ChatGPT can create so many content and images, and even if it creates an image or content which seems to be very similar to original one, how do we really conceptualize the idea of copyrights? So this is just to begin, and I think his intuition made the point that our language, our traditional language, is transformed, and we have to think anyway. And I would like to add to his observation that it's not only impact about our theoretical language, it's also something that touches our very existential experiences and praxis. Just to give a good example, this is a quote for one of the most exciting prayers in the Jewish prayer book over the year. It's taken from a moment in Rosh Hashanah, the New Year celebration, one of the peaks of the high holidays in Tfilat Musaf, which is another inner peak. Within Tfilat Musaf, it's a chapter that deals with Zichronot. And it starts by this quote that God, you see everything, you know everything. It's a declaration about God omniscience. It's a very, very exciting moment. And really, that's a moment, I don't know, each one with his own religious experience. At least for me, it's one of the moments where you really feel the endless gap between being a human and divine attributes, divine capacities. Now, when you take these capacities nowadays and think about them, you see that they lost their uniqueness as excluded to God. Think about the Article 7 of the GDPR, which was legislated 2018, the right to be forgotten. The right to be forgotten was something that is not doing its steps to the United States, at least now. I don't see it in the near future either. is about the right, human right, that every individual has to withdraw information about him or her, a true information, which stands on some conditions. The acknowledgement of this right came against religious background, the idea of repentance, the idea that someone could change his personality against his historical, factual background. But this right presumes that omniscience is already there, not in the hands of human beings, not only in the hands of God, it is there. This is the presumption, and this presumption actually, I think, it reflects something that it is already accepted and conceptualized by so many players around. The idea of omnipotence, I'm not saying, we talk to each other on Zoom or other video conferences. We also have some experience of being everywhere, right? So some of these attributes which traditionally were excluded to God, to the deity, are now should be, I think, in the very same line of Wiener, we should think about them anew, we should refine them, we should be more exact about the divine capacities vis-a-vis human created capacities. But this is definitely something that, this is another effect. But the last effect, which I want to elaborate a bit more about it, if you allow me a few more minutes, is that data revolution impacts also the traditional conception of normativity. And I would like to show that. Basically, the traditional understanding of normativity is that it is built of three components. We have a norm, whether it is a norm driven from divine law, or from natural law, or from just legislators, but we have a norm, either a legal norm, but not necessarily, could be social norm. Then we have an agent, which the norm is communicated to the agent, usually with human cognitive semantic. Don't do that, do that, you're allowed to do that, you better not do that, all kinds of dictations that the norm is dictated to an agent. And then the agent is to comply or not to comply with the norm, to behave, to have a conduct which aligns with the norm or not. That's the basic understanding of normativity since ever. Now, let's see what data revolution might change with this understanding. And I want to speak about data revolution, but I would just say that data revolution is about new understandings. It's about new insights. It's not necessarily about new technology. So in that respect, data revolution is more likely like scientific revolution rather than in the industrial revolution, which was the explosion of usages of so many techniques. So data revolution is about new understanding of two things, mainly technology and data. And this new understanding actually changed not only our daily life, practical daily life, but also the way we understand how things are going around. I'd like to show them. The first one, which is known thanks to Larry Lessig from Harvard Law School in his wonderful book, Law is Code, is that we have other modalities of regulations beside the traditional legal one. So this is the traditional form of normativity. I'm trying to take Larry's insight also to the normative aspects. Okay, this is the traditional form of normativity. We have a norm telling us, slow down, do not pass this speed. And okay, then we have an agent, a driver, and he had to comply or not to comply. If he's not complying, he is exposed to sanctions and like. But we could also achieve the very same goal by very primitive technology, the buffer or the bumper, let's say, right? And here we can achieve the very same goal in a much more efficient way, much cheaper. We don't need inspectors, cameras, and the like. Very, very simple. And the insights that comes with his inspection, and by the way, this is not a new technology. We have this technology, we found it also in Pompeii, they used it. So we have a history of more than 2 millennia using this technology. Nevertheless, in our intellectual history, we never contemplated about this technology and what does it mean. Until the 90s, when Larry Lessing's book came out. I mean, he actually, there were some people who preceded him, but the insight is that technology is not only an instrument, but something that has the capacity to shape human behavior. And that already challenges the separational phenomenology that technology is something contingent that might challenge law and religion as a source of meaning and order, but not something that it's really on the same level or the same. It's something that is incommensurable, we used to say, right? It's incomparable. But once we understand that technology could participate in shaping behavior, this is something that really leads to think anew about the involvement of technology in normative tasks or normative processes. And that gave rise to so many open spaces, starting from reading Larry Lessing's second version of his book, but also think about design theory, all kinds of, right? But if we take this insight and think anew about what does it mean about the concept of normativity, then we see that we could bypass agent mediation. We could have normativity without agentic involvement. We can have normativity without compliance. Now, what does it mean to have normativity without agentic activity, without agency? Basically, it means that we reduce or perhaps get rid of accountability, responsibility, liability. Traditionally, normativity was shaped in the Western way of thinking as combined with agency and responsibility. Think about normativity in religious terms, committing a sin, think about in legal contexts. This triad of norms, normativity, agency, and responsibility was united, and in many ways, data revolution is tearing apart this seemingly inherent association, and perhaps showing us the way that normativity will be considered without agency. There are several responses to that I can elaborate, but there are other things that the insights about data came out with. Basically, the data revolution starts from acknowledging that data is not only about documenting facts. It's not only representing something that exists independently. Nowadays, we think about data as something that might precede facts, or as one of the philosophers terms it, fact precursors, something that tells us about facts which either are not observable yet or are not observable by principle. Only by big data processing we could find these facts. But moreover, it also tells us about some knowledge we could not gain otherwise. So I want to mention 4 capacities, how they impact normativity, and to end by that. So the first capacity that comes out with the new understanding of data is that data has a generative capacity. As I said, we could generate new knowledge, some would argue even new facts by data. Data is not only a passive entity, it's something that is actively contributing to extending our reality independent of observing reality. This is something that goes against the new science. I mean, new science in the late modern terms, empiricist vision, right? That only what we observe could we take account as facts that we could abstract and find, right? So data revolution allows us to gain knowledge and to acknowledge facts which are not observable. There is also a term which means datification. I won't say too much about, but basically it is about quantitating everything. Right? Think about subjective experiences. I'm waking up in the morning, I slept horrible. This is something that we didn't have any way to measure or to compare to other things. But nowadays, with sensors and capacity to process data, we could quantify even personal experiences. We could then analyze this data, and we could come up with further insights, knowledge, and facts. So we could datify everything nowadays, not only represent facts, we could datify also some marginal dimensions which were never considered, some aspects. How many times a day I grab my hair? It could be something meaningful if we get enough data and we could compare it and we could analyze, I don't know. What does it mean that we have these capacities? The first meaning is that we have different approach to what does it mean to have knowledge and to reason. And while the traditional way of thinking about knowledge was through this pyramid, the wicked model, namely, it all starts from up above. Think about how the ancient philosophers talked about the differences between theoretical knowledge and practical knowledge, the knowledge of what, the knowledge of how, all kinds of stuff. But the traditional way of thinking about knowledge is that it is all organized in some way. The more we go down to the details, there might be some changes, but these are only particular individual changes. If we really want to understand how things work, we have to go up and to understand the principles, the rules, and then it all applies downstairs. Actually, that also marks the area of time, what we can gain nowadays and can predict. Now, this is also the verse in Probes, which I will not say, but following the data revolution, the pyramid is turning opposite. The way we think about gaining knowledge and about reasoning is not starting from top down, rather from bottom up. The more we collect data, the more we could find patterns, correlations, principles, which provide some meaning. We create information. The better we have information in which we gather, we could also create knowledge and we get also to the wisdom. See, this is something very significant that affects, by the way, how we think, how we teach and study law, starting from principles or starting from cases, all kinds of stuff. But this also brings me to the first and until today, the only one, reference of the Pope Francis. May God send him good health and recover. But the first time he referred to AI was in his address last summer in the G7 meeting. And he had a very interesting comment. Basically, he said that indeed, artificial intelligence can make decisions, can make choices. He made the distinction between choices and decisions. Can make choices, you know, what should we do, taking into considerations this context and that. Nevertheless, I suspect that's someone, I even suspect who gave him this idea. Nevertheless, he says, artificial intelligence cannot make decisions. To make decisions, we need wisdom. So if I can add my interpretation, my commentary to his point is saying that we didn't get rid of the traditional pyramid. There are things that we could only gain by wisdom. So we have alternative ways to gain knowledge and to gain good reasoning, but this is not about replacing traditional procedures. Okay, now, so, oh, wow. Yeah, I was, there are two other capacities. I won't say too much about them. This is, one of them is the precision. We can be much more precise, and we could replace rule-based execution by algorithmic execution. What does it mean and how it is connected to normativity? Normativity, since ever, is understood that the norm is formatted in general terms, generality, and it is like a rule-based. There is a rule. With these two capacities, we are anticipating normativity which will be customized to every and each individual in the same way that we have customized medicine, banking services, insurance, all kinds of stuff. With the knowledge that, with the data that we can process, we could customize individual or personal norms to every and each individual. And that means that we are also bypassing the standard format of the norm. And the standard format of the norm is important because norms also play a social role, namely that what allows what we call the idea of the common. We have something in common. We all subscribe to the same norms. We all follow the same decrees. We all follow the same values. That provides a sense of belonging, solidarity, and furthermore, once normativity will be customized based on algorithmic execution, not rule-based execution, we also lose that. So I end that by saying that I wanted to list 4 themes that are impacted by data revolution. While the first 2 themes, I think, are not unique to data revolution, even though they are in a different scale against the data revolution, the second 2 are much more peculiar or much more unique to the data revolution, and I think much more challenging. I don't have a solution. I think it is us to think about it. Thank you.